already filmed this video and I was rambling for like 45 minutes, so I'm back again because it didn't actually record because of my cats. Hello, my name is Alyssa and I am new here to the BookTube world, and I am actually so excited to be here. It has been something I've been telling myself, at least for the past several months, that I'm going to do, and I just never got around to it. I do think, one second, I have a cat that's being naughty. This is Gouda, by the way. I do think that it's easier said than done to come on and just talk to a camera. I think for me it's kind of been the pain point. I've been a little bit nervous about this. I'm still anxious right now, but I definitely had to get comfortable with talking to a camera. Even though I'm in the comfort of my own house, I do think it's been a little bit of a challenge. I think the other BookTube accounts I've watched, they make it seem so effortless and seamless. But then now being on this side of it, I have definitely noticed that is something that is not as easy as it seems. So I do think that the past couple months, not couple months, I mean I haven't done this too often, but I did have to get more comfortable with talking to myself on the camera, because the first couple of times I tried to do this, I watched it back and I was so uncomfortable because I could tell that I was uncomfortable while I was filming it. And I know part of that comes with practice and time, and you learn as you go. But it's really important to me that my authentic self truly shines through the screen, because one of my ultimate goals at the end of the day is I really want to make friends and build a community out of this. That is what I'm striving for, because I obviously love books. I love reading books. I love talking about books. It was really important to me that I actually seem like myself when I'm talking. But there's one thing that I can promise you is that for the most part, I can't really script anything. I kind of just say what's on my mind. I obviously will have talking points sometimes that I'm going to try and hit, but other than that, I won't be reading, I won't write out word for word what I want to say. So I guess that's a good thing. In that respect, you're definitely getting an authentic version of me. I wanted to do the BookTube Newbie Tags. I want to do the BookTube Newbie Tag questions, just so you can get an idea of what my reading tastes are, what I've read, kind of the motivating factors for me being here. And then at the end, I do want to kind of pivot just slightly, just to give a little background on me and who I am, because again, I really would like to make some friends and build a community out of this. I will do that at the end, and I'll let you know, because I do understand that everyone's time is valuable. So if you're even here to begin with, please know that is so much appreciated, and it gives me the warm fuzzies, because I appreciate that you're taking your time and spending your time that is so valuable here watching this. I know some people are really only here for the book content and not so much about who I am as a person, and that's totally a-okay. Understand that. I'll try and let you know once I wrap it up, so that way if you wanted to, then you can. Question number 1, why did you start this channel? So I've already touched on this a little bit. It's kind of two separate things. So when I was looking at 2024 and kind of planning out my goals or intentions, I was thinking about my hobbies as one part of it. And I really wanted, instead of trying a new hobby, which I am always down to do, I thought it would be kind of fun to take a hobby that I already have and maybe expand upon it in some way. Obviously, I love reading and I love talking about books. I've debated doing a book club, but sometimes it's just easier to I'm a homebody, so I like being at home. So I was like, okay, well, why don't we try something different, and I can learn how to edit videos in the process, because that's something also new that I haven't done. And then the second part of it was, this year I've kind of deemed the year of me. And what I mean by that is I've been doing a lot of work on myself and trying to figure out what makes me happy, what's going to bring me peace and not make me feel as anxious. What can I do mentally and physically to make sure that I'm in a good spot. And then also fostering new connections. And I think something that is hard as an adult, I don't want to speak for everyone, but in my experience, once you're out of school, or if you have a job where you work from home, or you're not necessarily in a central location or place where everyone's meeting every day, it can be very challenging to meet and then make new friends. It is a little bit more complex and challenging and sometimes scary to make new friends. So I really wanted to try and make new friends and connect with people from all over, because that's also, I think, really important to me. Is I really like the diverseness of like meeting people from different areas, from different backgrounds, from different cultures. That's why I started this channel. It's kind of combining two different of my goals and intentions into one, and I'm really excited to be here. A little bit nervous, a little bit intimidated, but I'm ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm very excited about this. My cheeks are hurting from smiling so much. Number 2, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to BookTube? So I thought about this question probably more than I should have, but I think this is a really hard question to answer. And I think it's hard because of a couple things. One, there are so many creative booktubers out there, and they have such these fun and unique ideas. Like I really like the ones that like made like specific games to like choose their TBR. And I think that's like so cool. I also know that I'm not the most decisive of people. I'm a very indecisive person. It's something I'm working on. But I would have a really hard time with any sort of prompt games myself. But I think it's so cool that people have the imagination to do it. The other thing that I think kind of makes it challenging is that I feel like there are so many things that have been done already. I would be remiss to like be like, oh, I had this new, unique, fun, creative idea, when I actually don't know if it was me that came up with that idea. You know, someone else could have already done that idea, and I wouldn't want to take credit for something if I wasn't actually truly the OG and like made that. I do think like somewhere down the line, I'd also really like to design my own sort of game surrounding books, because I really do like board games. I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon, just because I'm still trying to find my feet. And like I said, I'm a very indecisive person. So when I choose my TBR, I will just choose a random one. I'll shake up the jar before I do it, obviously. I'll just choose one, and that will be the book that I read. If there is ever a moment in time where I feel like I'm maybe in more of a mood to, mood read or have a choice over my books, which happens, but very, very rarely, then I would draw maybe like 5 from the jar, and I would choose between those 5 which one I want to read. It kind of also has a dual purpose. My sister-in-law, a couple of years ago, she did the little creative project thing where she put all of the books that we read in a year into these little Christmas ornaments, and you hang them on the tree. I thought that was such a cool idea, and I was like, oh, I kind of want to continue doing that. So then at the end of the year, once I read them, so let's just say I read this book, then I can put it into a separate jar, and then all of the things in the jar will go into the ornament at the end of the year. So it's kind of like a dual purpose project. Very time consuming, but totally worth it. Number 3, what are you most excited about for this channel? I've already kind of touched on it with number 1, but really I'm so excited to talk to you guys about books, to make friends in the process, to hear what your book recommendations are. This will tie into the next question, which is, why do you love reading? The reason why I love reading is because it is such a subjective experience. You could love a book and it may not be my cup of tea, and vice versa. I could love a book and you may not like it at all, and that's totally okay. That's totally valid. The reason why I think that is because just like no two people are the exact same, no two reading experiences will ever be the exact same. I feel like your reading experience is unique to who you are as a person as well, because even if we both had the same 5-star read, we may have that same 5-star read, and it may be 5 stars for completely different reasons. And that's just because we've had different life experiences. I may resonate with something differently than you do. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful. I think it's also interesting to hear, like, when people are kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum, to see, like, their opinions. I do think there is a very healthy way to disagree, though, without, like, attacking. So that is something that I will establish kind of that boundary on with this channel. Is I would love to hear any sort of differing opinions you have on a book, specifically if we're on very opposite spectrums on the rating scale. But I just think there's like a respectful way to handle that. So always down to have a conversation about it, though. What else was I gonna say about that? There was something else I was gonna say. Oh, yes, that is the reason why I never will decide whether or not I'm going to read a book based on the Goodreads ratings, because there have been some Goodreads books that I've read that had like an overall like 3.3 or 3.4 star rating, which isn't horrible, but it's definitely kind of like on the lower end. And those end up sometimes being my 5-star reads. So I never try to base it, because it is such a subjective experience. And there are, like, vice versa, it's happened where there's been books that have been rated so highly that I read them, I'm like, oh, I don't really like that one that much. And that's just because we all have different life experiences. We all have different reading experiences because of who we are as people. That doesn't mean we can't learn, we can't grow. Definitely is still happening. We may resonate with books a lot differently because of our life experiences and because of our viewpoints. What book or series got you into reading? Percy Jackson and the Olympians was by far like the one that sticks out the most in my brain when I was in like late elementary school, middle school is maybe when those ones came out. Oh, I remember asking for them every birthday, every Christmas. I wanted to get another book for the series. The other ones that come to mind are Divergent. I really like Divergent. I did enjoy Twilight. I was not necessarily like Twilight like girl that had like merch and stuff for it. I wasn't that type of girl, but I did enjoy Twilight. Hunger Games, I Am Number 4. And I think those are the only ones that are really coming. Oh, the Selection series. I'm excited to revisit those at some point in time. I do want to go back and reread some of them. The next two I'm going to combine into one, so because the answer is related. So what questions would I ask my favorite booktubers, and what challenges do I think will be hard to overcome for this channel? The question and the challenges kind of go hand in hand. So I think for me, what I'm nervous about is any sort of negative backlash or commentary that is just put out there to be mean. There's a respectful way to disagree with opinions or like state your own opinion without knocking someone else's opinion. But I am nervous about the people that just show up online just to be mean, because I do think it's a lot easier to say some things when you're hiding behind a screen. Those comments are coming from, these feelings that person may have, and they just may be misplaced and misdirected. I do think it's really hard though to like say that and to like be at peace with it and then actually experience it. So I'm a little bit nervous about dealing with any sort of hurtful comments and just like how to navigate that situation. And then the other thing is kind of with the balance and the pressure. So for me, reading, obviously if you're on BookTube as well, reading is really a form of enjoyment and like a hobby. And I don't ever want it to feel like it is a chore or something that I need to do, because I don't want to get burnt out by like creating content and like trying to meet an expectation that I set on myself. Reading has really been like a prime source of stability and support in my life, and I don't ever want it to be anything that I view in any sort of negative capacity. So I feel like I need to set an expectation with how much I'm posting content, because again, I don't want it to kind of overrule my life and then I get burnt out by reading and doing this, because again, it's more of a passion and hobby project for right now. And again, I can revisit this as time goes on to reevaluate, but I think my goal is to post once a week. I think that is like completely feasible with, my reading schedule, my reading habits, my life outside of here. So that is my current goal. And now that's kind of like the boundary that I'm setting with myself and with this channel. And yeah. Those are the two things I think I'm like most nervous about. And editing, because I've never edited anything in my life except for a Spanish cooking video in high school. And I remember that kind of being disastrous. That'll be really interesting, is to edit. And then to watch myself back while I'm editing, because I get so nervous, I get so weirded out by myself, and then just knowing that there are people in my life that may see it. But then I remind myself that the people in my life that see it will support, and if there's people in my life that see it and they're like, oh, that girl's weird, why is she doing that, then maybe I don't need them in my life, right? When did I start reading? There's going to be different answers on this depending on who you ask. I personally, going back in my memory bank, I first remember reading when I was like maybe 5 or 6 years old. I think specifically second grade is like when I really know and can remember some of the things that I read. Now my parents would say that I started reading pretty much as soon as I started talking. Not to say that I knew the words that I was saying, but like I would grab the children's books and I would read to my little brother. Even though I didn't know what the words said, I would like make up stories and turn the pages and read to him for like hours. I was the narrator for my 5K play. I was one of the only kids in my class that was able to do that at that point in time. I only know that this happened because I didn't believe them, and they pulled out a home video of me being the narrator for this 5K play. So books have always kind of been like a thing that I've been super into since I was little. And then I would say when I went to college, I didn't read as much for enjoyment. I just didn't really have time to read for enjoyment. It was more so things I was required to read for the class curriculum. So it wasn't until I graduated in 2020 when COVID first hit, and I know COVID-19 could be a trigger point for some of you, so I apologize. I'll try and skip over this part pretty quickly. But obviously, like, coming off of college and not being able to go out and do activities with friends because a lot of the businesses and stuff were shut down and we were supposed to like stay home and self-isolate, that was when I really started getting back into reading for enjoyment, and that's kind of what kickstarted me getting to this point, and it's really become such a big part of my life again, and I'm so happy that it is. Where do I read? So the short answer is everywhere, and I know you're probably rolling your eyes at that maybe a little bit. I would be too. But I am a homebody, so I'd say most of my reading happens in my home. My boyfriend is really into playing video games. That's like his form of winding down and me time at the end of the day. So he'll sit on the couch playing video games. I'll sit next to him and read my book. And then we'll have the cats curled up next to us, and it's like a cute little family bonding time. But I would say that is where I probably primarily read in our house. And I do think one of the things I do recommend, if you haven't done it before, is I think it's easier to connect to a story if somehow where you're reading, the setting is related to something in your story. So if it was like a nice day outside, I would go to a park and read in a park, and maybe my book setting is somewhere outside with like trees and birds chirping and whatnot. And I feel like it's like a special connection moment. I think specifically like a really good example I have is my boyfriend and I went to Greece this past fall. It was my first international trip, so it was super fun. And again, because I love Percy Jackson and the Olympians, I was really stoked to go to Greece. But I brought the Song of Achilles to read while I was in Greece. And I just felt like I connected more to the story because of the setting and where I was, knowing that I was in Greece and that's like where the story was based. So definitely highly recommend doing that if you haven't done that before. What kinds of books do I read? I read everything. And again, I know that is such a horrible answer. I don't just stick to one genre or two or three or four or even five. I guess if you're comparing nonfiction and fiction, I tend to gravitate towards fiction. One of my goals this year is to read more nonfiction. I want to read at least one a month, although I did not do that in February, so I'm one behind, so I'm gonna have to add a second one in somewhere. But my boyfriend Adrian, he's really more so into nonfiction than fiction. So I'd say we have actually a pretty good nonfiction collection in our house, and I try to get recommendations from him. But I do tend to stick more so towards fiction. In regards to genre within fiction, I'll read it all. Horror, mystery, thriller, historical fiction, romance, fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian, lit fic, you name it, and I will try it. I may not always finish a book, but I will give it my best shot. I've really gotten a lot better, I would say, in the past year or so, where if I'm not liking a book, I'll give it a fair shot. I'll normally give it up until almost the halfway point, unless I'm really not liking it, but I at least give it up to like the halfway point, and if I'm not liking it, I won't finish it. But that happens very rarely, thankfully. But I will try to read any genre, any book, anything is fair game. And I think that's why I also loved used bookstores so much. I mean, bookstores in general, but I really like going to the used bookstore because sometimes there's just like no rhyme or reason to what books are there, which books there are to choose from. And I really enjoy just like grabbing random books, reading the back, seeing if it's something that'll pique my interest. And again, that's why I also don't go off the Goodreads rating score either, because as long as it piques my interest, even if everyone doesn't like it, I may still end up really enjoying it. Other than that, I think that's all of like the BookTube Newbie Tags. I will go into the second part, which is just giving a little bit of background on me. So if you want to stick around, you're more than welcome to. I appreciate it if you made it this far and have joined me and stuck around to listen about my ramblings about book. Okay, so about me. My name is Alyssa, and I'm now in my late 20s, which is kind of scary to say because time goes so fast. Always been obviously a book lover. I don't really like talking about work so much because work really shouldn't be part of like identity and like who you are as a person. One of the first things, specifically in the US, is like when people ask about you, it's like, what do you do for work? It's never like, who are you? What are your interests? What do you like to do? And that's something that I specifically noticed when I'm traveling is like when you meet someone in other countries, they don't necessarily ask, they're not like, what do you do for work? Now, like, they ask you, like, oh, who are you? For all intents and purposes, because it relates to why I'm here. I do work from home full time. I'm medical field adjacent, but obviously working from home, I don't necessarily get to meet like colleagues organically, at least not in person because we're based all over the world. So it was really important for me to try and make friends this way and talk about books. I do feel like there's like a component of my life socially that I am missing. Like I do have like a good friend group and friends and family and all of that, but I've also been a lot more selective, and I don't know, I just like feel like specifically around books, because they are such a big part of my life, I don't necessarily have like a group around books. And I would really like to have that. Sorry, I'm looking at notes because I had like little talking points. That way I don't just like ramble on forever. Okay, this is like kind of like a big thing about who I am. So I'm born and raised in Wisconsin. I come from a really, really small town, like very small. And the joke always was, there's more cows than people, which I know, but like it is also somewhat truthful. But I wanted something with a little bit more opportunities. So when the time came and I graduated from high school, I decided to come to the Twin Cities. And the Twin Cities is like St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Minnesota. I love it here. I really do. There's always something going on. There's always activities. If I ever say I'm bored, I'm lying, because there's no reason for me to be bored, because there's always something for me to do here if I need something to do. I don't really foresee myself moving back to a super small town, or at least not one that's still like 30 minutes from like a big city. Like I do really like being around a lot of other people. Well, there's always something happening. I think honestly it's done a lot of wonders for my mental health, and I don't foresee that changing. One of my biggest downsides to living in Minnesota has been the winters. The winters are long and they're cold, and there's normally a lot of snow. However, this winter has been very different. It's a very, very abnormal winter. It's been like, 60s, and then it can get down, below freezing. But normally we have a ton of snow on the ground by now, and it's like freezing outside, but there's no snow on the ground. It's maybe snowed twice, and we've had maybe like 4 times where it's actually like stuck on the ground a little bit, but like the 2 times it's been like more than an inch of snow on the ground. And now it's all melted. So it's been a really strange winter. I do think that my boyfriend and I do plan on moving away from Minnesota at some point in the next couple of years, just to try and, challenge ourselves with a new challenge. Challenge with a new challenge. He was raised in Minnesota and has been here pretty much his whole life. So he wants like something new. And for me, the winters are always a pain point, and I want some place I can be outside more year round, because I'm not a winter sports girl. I don't like doing winter activities. I would rather stay inside and read a book, which is a hobby in and of itself, but I would like to be able to be outside more year round. We adopted 2 kitties. They're from the same litter. Everyone always asks if they're siblings because cats can have different dads, but they look different because they do have different dads. But they're from the same litter. We adopted them during COVID. And they have cheese-themed names, not because I'm from Wisconsin, just because when we were trying to think of themed names, we came up with the name Gouda, and we really liked that for a cat, so to keep the theme, we just chose another cheese-themed name, and that was Blue. While he's here, I wanted to introduce Mr. Gouda Man. He's so sweet most of the time. He's also a little floofer monster. He is overly attached to me. He can be a little bit spicy. I don't know if you know anything about orange kitties, but I kind of equate them to the attitude of like the Sour Patch Kid and like the Sour Patch Kid commercials. He can be super sweet, which he is right now. Then they can also be pretty naughty and spicy, and he is definitely both of those things. This little princess is Blue. She has this toy that she's had since she was a kitten, and I'll see if I can find it. But anytime I say the name of the toy, she knows what I'm talking about, and she'll stop what she's doing, so I'm gonna do that right now. Blue, where's fish? Where's your fishy? So this is her fish. She's had this since she was a kitten when we first adopted her. You can definitely tell it is kind of on its last life a little bit, but I just can't bring myself to get rid of it because she's so attached to it. She's obsessed with this toy. Toy started falling apart. We got a new one, thinking like, oh, we'll just like replace it. Even this one's kind of rough, but you can see it's still attached to the stick. It did fall off the string, so we had to like re-tie it on, but it's supposed to look somewhat like this. You can tell this one has been through the ringer, but she's so obsessed with it. This is still like her favorite OG toy. You will see them a lot. They're very codependent cats. They're very needy. They're always getting into trouble. Constantly. There's so many times I'll probably have to edit out that I had to get up and go and reprimand them. Prime example being that if you have cats, you know what, they like to chew on plants. So I went and got this lovely fake flowers just to give something in the house because we have no plants. There's no real plants in my house because they chew on them, they knock over the plants. And I got this nice little pottery vase. I know some people say vase. I'm going to say vase. I got this and I was like, oh, how fun. I should have known though, because anytime we rearrange furniture or we bring something new into the house, the cats are so naughty and curious with it. So they've knocked this over now off the table. Well, it's like tipped over on the table, not off the table, like 4 times. So lately I have to keep it in my sights at all times. And hopefully eventually they'll lose interest. I'm just glad that the Christmas tree has now gone away because that is Gouda's favorite toy. And it's so annoying because he's fluffy, and you'll see this because I'll introduce you to them. But he's fluffy, so he'll launch himself. We put a camera on them at night so we could see who was causing all the disturbances with the Christmas tree. He launches himself into the middle of the tree, and he takes his big fluffy tail and he like swooshes it so it knocks off all the ornaments off the tree. So then he can like pop the ornaments off and then bat them around on the floor at night, and it's so annoying. I'm so glad we got rid of, well, we still have it. I don't know how much life is still left in our artificial tree, but I'm so glad. Like, we literally put it up right before Christmas, and we pretty much took it down like 2 or 3 weeks later. Like, it can't stay up that long in this house, or it would just not go well. Between the broken ornaments, my mental health, my lack of sleep, it just, yeah, wouldn't be good. Outside of reading, which is arguably my number 1 hobby, I would say my boyfriend and I really like sports. We're really into watching Formula 1 with one of our really good friends, and then we're really into like NFL football. Interesting because he's a Vikings, a Minnesota Vikings fan, and I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, so it's a little bit of rivalry if you know anything about football. So that makes interesting watch days when they play each other specifically. I really like art. I want to get more in touch with my creative side again and like start drawing and painting. I used to be really into it in high school, and again that kind of fell off in college, and I haven't really gotten back into it since, outside of 1 or 2 maybe craft nights. But I feel like art is something you kind of need to continue doing, or you kind of like lose your touch. So I kind of feel like I need to start practicing again. So one of my favorite things about the cities is we always do trivia every week, and it's always something we look forward to, and it's super fun. But other than that, I mean, traveling obviously, but that can sometimes be expensive, and that can't happen all the time. It's only after budgeting and planning, all that fun stuff. But other than that, I think that's pretty much how you could summarize up me in a couple minutes. I don't even know how long it's been. I feel like I've been rambling for forever. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. I also appreciate your patience as I try and find my feet with all of this. And thank you so much for being here, and I will see you guys soon.